Hello everyone, this should be the video that gets you started for the ELIT 623 course, Classroom Literacy Research. The start of this course, the main thing that I want you to think about is asking and answering questions about your kids' learning. This could be applied to the kids in your classrooms, but this is also a course where you could actually apply to family and community settings that you know of where you'd like to get a little bit deeper into how kids actually learn and how kids perform with language and literacy. It might also be a course where you think about teacher growth and teacher learning, because your process of changing and growing is actually a great effect on your students as well. So think about that. What questions can we ask and answer over the course of this half of a semester that will start to springboard us into thinking more deeply about those questions as we go into the subsequent courses. The key thing is that we'll get started with processes here that you will use in the capstone course at the end of the program to take a research topic and go much further in depth to that topic. So you'll get started here, and you may not keep this topic for the end of the program. You may do so, that's your choice. But the key thing is to get this idea of the process of research, finding a question to ask, finding tools to help you answer that question, and then how to interpret that question for further practice in the classroom. So one of the first things that you might want to do in this course is go in your mind back to the EDRD 615 courses from the first semester. Both sections, the language and literacy development and the teaching literacy course. What from those two courses did you find you applied and made changes to practice? Of those things that you actually brought in and tried out in your classroom and thought this is going to make a difference, what are the things that you want to be able to communicate about? You want to learn more in depth about those things. You want to know what the kids are doing as learners, how the knowledge might continue to inform your practice, how to spread that better to teachers around you, and so on. Or you might also take a different tack and think about questions you've just always had about literacy and language learning and teaching, and this class is your chance to dig in a little bit more deeply. So start thinking about the possibility of a research topic for yourself by thinking those two different avenues. One, what are those things that you brought from the first two courses into your practice, which you can then look a little bit more in depth at those practices and find out how they actually work. The other thing is to go for questions that you've always had about literacy and language, but not necessarily have had a chance to explore them. The first readings for this course are going to give you an introduction to case study methodology, and the Cesare Strader book, the What Works Practical Guide for Teacher Research book. That's going to be a really clear classroom-based introduction to case study research. The reason we're focusing on case study research is that this gives you immediate validity, ways that the research can inform your practice today based on the kids that you see on a year-to-year basis. So this chance to dig in deeply, you want to answer questions that give you a sense of validity. In a lot of the research that's going to be out there on your topic in the research base, it's not going to answer your questions perfectly to your satisfaction, or their validity might be more generalized. It might be more statistical and normative, and you might be thinking, well, what about my kids? What about a kid who thinks this way? What about a kid who does this? And case study research actually gives you that opportunity to look closer at smaller groups of students, individuals, small groups, maybe even a whole classroom. So your sample size for this study that you're going to do in this class is going to be very small, so that you can actually gather the data that you want to over a course of a few weeks and then look at that data fairly closely. Validity is the big question. Validity in a statistical study is normative, but validity in a case study is just that question of, is it what I think it is? Am I getting it right? Am I seeing the students correctly? Am I hearing what they're saying correctly? Am I interpreting things in a way that makes sense for learners? So that's one of the reasons I coach you to go back to the two early courses, is because you were really focusing closely on those questions. What really is going to work well for my students in my classroom? And following up on those applications that you made from those courses would help you think much more closely about validity. The other key skill in research that we're going to work on is the literature review, which is to say that if you get a topic going, you want to know what other research has been done on that. Has there been a big normative study that gives us a sense for what's typical for kids for a different age or grade level? What predicts failures, what predicts successes, that type of thing. You'd want to know, are there big normative studies like that? And how does what I learned from my kids compare to what was learned in those big normative studies? Also, you just want to get a good sense for who are the other people out there who care about this question? Who else is thinking about my kids learning with this and this and this? So that literature review is going to be a key skill that you take forward for the capstone as well, and for each of the courses from here on out. The key thing to think about with this, just in terms of it being important for your practice right now, is that we know a lot about how kids learn literacy. There's a ton of research out there on almost any topic that you can imagine, and especially the topics that you've become familiar with and what's required for you as teachers. But there is a fairly large application gap, which means that there are tons of research studies out there on various aspects of literacy, but oftentimes those studies haven't been converted into what do I do as a teacher? And this is a chance for you to do something like that, to say, but I need to know what to do as a teacher. So when we talk about a literature review, you might learn all there is to know about something, for example, like listening comprehension. But with something like listening comprehension, the question is for you, what do I do in my classroom? And doing a small case study approach to things may help you better answer what to do with kids in your classroom, because you're going to go in depth with a particular group of kids and see what they have to tell you. Okay, so look at the list of readings. It's going to be a fairly short list of readings for this week, just because I know we've got a shortened week. We'll dig in a little bit further in the second module of the course. We will do Module 1 will be a 1-week module just to get you introduced to the content, do some of the early readings. Module 2 will be a 2-week module, and we'll do 3 2-week modules. Is that right? No, we'll do a couple of 2-week modules, and then the last module will be a 3-week module where you'll be focused more on actually doing this, finishing up this research study that we'll be doing over the course of the 8 weeks. So it's a short scope for a research study, which will mean that you'll just do something that's fairly narrow and work a little bit more on the literature review, and we'll go forward from there. If you have questions about the process, feel free to email me. We'll be meeting at the end of the second week of the course on campus at Centera, so I look forward to seeing you then.